If you're a parent who's estranged from your child, you know how heartbreaking and stuck you can feel. Well, this explainer is for you. We're going to break down a powerful framework that goes way beyond the usual advice and offers a real, tangible path toward reunification. So, let's dive in.
You know this moment, right? It hits you at the grocery store, at a party, anywhere. That simple, innocent question. And you just freeze. Do you lie and say they're great, or do you tell the truth, that you have absolutely no idea how your own child is doing? That public shame can cut just as deep as the private silence.
The first thing you absolutely have to understand is this. What you're going through is not some unique, personal failing. It is so easy to feel like you're the only one, like you've messed up in a way no other parent has. But that blame, it just keeps you stuck. Understanding the bigger picture, well, that's what opens the door to a real solution.
And look, the numbers here are pretty staggering. Roughly 1 in 4 Americans is estranged from a close family member. You are so far from being alone in this. This isn't just a handful of isolated family problems. It's a massive societal issue, really, an epidemic of disconnection. And that means it needs a whole new way of thinking.
Okay, so let's dig into that idea, the modern family crisis. Because to find a way out, we first have to understand the powerful forces that are driving this whole thing. This didn't just happen out of thin air.
You know, there's been a huge cultural shift. Today, when an adult child feels hurt or misunderstood, the advice they get from their social media feed, from their friends, even from some therapists, is often incredibly simple. Cut them out. That parent is toxic. The go-to solution has become a clean break, not working toward reconciliation.
So that leads to the big question, right? If this is so common, why are so many parents struggling to fix it? Well, it turns out that the most common approach is they're actually making things worse.
So many parents fall into one of 3 traps. First, there's the myth that time heals all wounds. But in these situations, time usually just hardens the silence. Second, there's this idea that you can write one perfect magical apology letter that will fix everything. These almost never work because they so often miss the real issue. And finally, you get this false choice. Either fight harder for your kid or just give up and let it go. But there is a third option, and that option is to prepare.
And this is so important to get. Sending more texts, more gifts, trying to explain yourself over and over, it doesn't come across as love. To a child who has decided they need space, it feels like pressure. It looks like weakness, desperation, or even stalking. Every single time you push, their nervous system screams, pull back even further.
Okay, so if pushing and chasing doesn't work, what does? The answer lies in a complete, fundamental shift in your mindset, and really in your energy. This is the absolute core of this entire approach.
Just let that sink in for a minute. This is the whole ballgame. The goal isn't to argue or convince or persuade them to come back. The goal is to become a person their nervous system finally recognizes as safe, a magnetic, steady presence that they will naturally want to move toward when they're ready.
Let's break that down a little. Chasing, that's all about pressure. It looks like begging for a text back, trying to prove how much you love them, endlessly explaining your side of the story. But attracting, that's about creating safety. It's about regulating your own emotions, genuinely healing your own wounds, and building a full, vibrant life that they would actually want to be part of. It's about becoming magnetic. And that brings us to the #1 skill you need, emotional regulation. See, when you're walking around in a state of panic or guilt or desperation, your child feels that, even from a distance. Think of it like a radio signal. If you're broadcasting pure static and panic, they can't tune in. But when you calm your own signal, you create the quiet space where they can finally feel safe enough to even think about reconnecting.
Okay, so this sounds good, but how do you actually do it? This isn't about wishful thinking, it's a structured, step-by-step process. Let's walk through the framework. The Revive framework gives you a real path. It starts with R for releasing your own trauma response so you stop acting out of panic. E is for embracing real emotional healing for yourself. V is verifying what the true root causes of the estrangement were. I is for improving your communication skills for when you do reconnect. Then you vitalize your own life. You build a life you love. And only after all that do you get to E, which is execute a smart reunification strategy. Notice that reaching out is the very last step, not the first.
So this is the essential question, the one you have to ask yourself right now, honestly, before you even think about sending that text or making that call.
What is your nervous system truly broadcasting to the world? Safety or pressure? Because the answer to that question determines everything.
And you know what? Your readiness is actually measurable. Based on a pretty simple self-assessment, most parents quickly find out they're in that do not reach out zone. Now, this isn't about judging yourself, it's just data. It shows you that the foundational work of getting your own system regulated has to come first. Reaching out before you're truly ready isn't brave, it's just risky.
And all of this work leads to something really powerful. This reframes the entire goal. See, this isn't just about getting your child to talk to you again. It's about who you become in the process. Let's be really clear about what's at stake. This work is so much bigger than just your relationship. Family pain, it gets passed down through generations. Whatever wounds you don't heal now, they become the burden your child will have to carry into their own life and their own relationships. You have this incredible opportunity to be the one who finally stops that cycle.
And this right here, this is the image to hold in your mind. A lighthouse doesn't run around chasing ships. It stands firm, it stays strong, and it shines its light, becoming a beacon of safety for ships that are lost in a storm. Your child is in a storm. Your job is to become their lighthouse. Stable, steady, and shining. In the end, it really all boils down to this one simple, powerful truth. More than anything else in the world, your child needs a happy, healthy parent. They need you to be that person. And the most beautiful thing about that is that it's a goal you can start working on today, for them and for you.
You know, family estrangement, it's just one of the most painful things anyone can go through, right? It's this silent epidemic, so much shame, so much confusion. But what if the way back wasn't what you think it is? What if it's not about chasing or begging or trying to prove yourself? What if there's a totally different path? Well, that's what we're going to dive into.
You know that moment. You're just trying to get through your day. Maybe you're at the grocery store or a party and someone asks that one simple question, "How's your kid?" And you just freeze. What do you even say? Do you lie, pretend everything's great, or do you admit the truth, that you have no idea, that the last time you talked, maybe they said something awful? It's that moment that just stops your heart, isn't it?
Okay, so if that feeling sounds familiar at all, I need you to hear this loud and clear. This is not a personal failure. I'm going to say it again. It is not your fault. That shame you feel, that instinct to just hide away, it's incredibly common. But it's all based on a huge misunderstanding of what's really going on here.
And listen, if you feel like you're completely alone in this, you are so wrong. The numbers are staggering. We're talking about roughly 1 in 4 Americans being estranged from a close family member. Think about that. This isn't just your family's private struggle. This is a massive societal crisis. It's an epidemic, and it's clear the old ways of dealing with it just aren't working.
So let's talk about this modern family crisis and why estrangement is so much bigger than just one family. The question is, why is this happening so much now? Well, it's because going no contact has kind of become a thing. It's a modern cultural trend. The old rules of how families are supposed to work have been completely tossed out. And honestly, most of us were never taught how to handle this new reality.
Yeah, think about it. Today, if a young person is hurting, where do they go? They go online. They see social media advice, maybe even get therapy trends that push no contact as the go-to answer for anything toxic. And when you mix that with how our societal values are shifting, the whole idea becomes about setting boundaries by just building walls. The problem is, nobody's really talking about how to repair the bridge first.
And this right here, this quote gets to the absolute core of why this matters so much. This isn't just about your pain or getting your relationship back for your own peace of mind. No, it's way bigger than that. It's about breaking a cycle. Because whatever pain, whatever disconnection isn't healed by you, it doesn't just disappear. It gets passed down. It becomes the problem your kids and maybe even their kids will have to face.
Okay, so if the stakes are that high, why do the things we try to do to fix it almost always seem to make it worse? Well, it's because most of us are playing by a rulebook that's completely wrong. We're believing in myths that are actually keeping our families apart.
Let's bust 3 of the biggest myths right now. First up, time heals all wounds. No way, not in this case. With estrangement, time usually just makes the silence louder and the distance greater. Myth number 2, the perfect apology. You know, you write that long, heartfelt letter, But if it comes from a place of panic, it can actually backfire and slam the door shut for good. And the third big one is this false choice. You either have to fight for them or just let go. That's not it. There's a third way, a path of active preparation.
And this gets to why those old methods just fail. All the begging, the chasing, the constant texts trying to prove how much you love them, it just doesn't work. You have to see it from their side. To your child, that energy doesn't feel like love. It feels like pressure. It reads as desperation, weakness, and I know this is hard to hear, but sometimes it can even feel like stalking. And what does that do? It just pushes them further and further away.
All right, this leads us to the single biggest mindset shift you have to make, and it's going to feel completely backward at first. The goal is not to chase your child. The goal is to move from a state of pursuit to a state of attraction. It's about becoming so healed, so calm, so safe that they are naturally drawn back to you. It's a total flip of the script.
And you can see the difference right here. The old way, it's all outward energy. It's chasing, begging, proving, panicking. It's frantic, right? But the new way, it's all about turning inward. It's about attracting, not chasing, regulating yourself, not begging, healing, not proving, and preparing, not panicking. This is how you go from feeling powerless to feeling powerful.
So why does this work? It all boils down to something called the safety principle. And this is huge. Your child isn't staying away because they don't love you. They're not trying to punish you. They're staying away because their nervous system, literally their body, doesn't feel safe coming back. It feels the pressure. It anticipates the conflict. It senses your pain and it goes into self-protection mode. And here's the secret sauce. When you regulate, they relax. When you stop broadcasting that frequency of panic and desperation and guilt, their nervous system can finally take a breath. It gets the signal that it's okay to let its guard down. Your calm is literally the key that unlocks their defenses. When you're regulated, they can finally feel safe enough to even think about moving closer.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, that sounds great, but how do I actually do that? Well, it's not some kind of magic trick. It's a clear, structured process. And that's where the Revive framework comes in. It's a 6-step plan to help you become that magnetic parent.
And look, it all starts with your own internal work. First, R is for release. You release that hair-triggered trauma response so you can actually stay calm. E is for embrace. You embrace your own healing and become rejection-proof. Then V is for verify. You figure out the real root causes instead of just guessing. I is for improve. You level up your communication skills. The second V is for vitalize. You get your own life back. You become someone who is vibrant and interesting. And then, and only then, the final E. You execute a smart, strategic plan for reunification. So when you boil it all down, it comes to this one core question you have to ask yourself honestly. In every single thing you do, every text, every non-text, every post, even in your silence, what are you broadcasting? Is the signal you're sending out safety or is it pressure? And this is where we're headed. The goal isn't just to get them back. That's thinking too small. The real goal is to become the lighthouse parent. It's about rebuilding a future that your child actually wants to be a part of.
I love this analogy. Your new job description is this: be the lighthouse. Think about it. A lighthouse is steady, it's shining, it's a reliable point of safety that ships look for when they're in a storm. What a lighthouse is not is another storm they have to get through, or an emotional wreck that they feel they have to come back and fix.
And let's never forget why this is so important. When you do this work, when you become that lighthouse, you're doing more than just saving one relationship. You are literally breaking the generational cycle of trauma for good. You're making sure your kids and their kids never have to go through this. You're not just feeling the past, you are healing the future.
So let's land the plane with this one final thought. It all comes back to you. It's time to stop waiting. Stop waiting for them to change, for your ex to get it, or for some magic amount of time to pass. Your kid needs one happy, healthy parent to be that lighthouse. And that parent can be you. You can be the one.
Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision. You know, you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, there it is.
Right, it's very binary. Broken or not broken.
Exactly. It's comforting because we like things to be visible and neatly categorized. But step into the world of family dynamics, divorce, and custody, and that x-ray machine is just completely shattered. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky.
You're absolutely right. You are looking at symptoms of profound pain, but the root cause is often completely obscured by, layers of conflict, legal maneuvering, and deep emotional kaya.
Yeah.
Which brings us to today's mission for you listening. We are taking on the heartbreaking, immensely complex, and surprisingly profitable world of parental alienation and family reunification.
It's a heavy one.
It really is. We're unpacking how a system theoretically designed to protect the best interests of the child can actually end up erasing a parent entirely from a child's life.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at what it actually takes to bring a shattered family back together.
And we're pulling from two really distinct sources for this deep dive. The first is a transcript from the 2020 documentary called Erasing Family, which offers this really heavy systemic critique of the U.S. divorce court and child support systems.
Yeah, it's very intense.
It is. And the second is a webinar for the Revive coaching program. Now, this was designed by a formerly alienated child, and it offers a highly unconventional psychological framework for parents who are trying to win back their estranged children.
And we should definitely warn you right out of the gate, the sources we're looking at today pull absolutely no punches.
None at all.
They contain highly charged, emotional, and very politically sensitive critiques of legal systems and specific individuals. So to be completely clear, we aren't here to take sides or endorse anyone's legal claims, specific viewpoints, or coaching methods.
Right. Absolutely not taking sides.
Right. Our job today is just to look at the blueprints of their arguments. We're acting as your guides to impartially convey the ideas and narratives contained entirely within the source material you provided, just so you can understand how these arguments are built.
Yeah, we're just laying it out for you.
Right.
So the central question we have to ask is, how does a system designed to protect kids end up erasing parents entirely? And what does it take to fix that? Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The documentary starts by outlining the sheer, staggering scope of this crisis. They claim that every 60 seconds, a child loses contact with one parent permanently because of what is happening in the family court system.
Every 60 seconds. It's really hard to wrap your head around that.
It's wild. That results in an estimated 22 million American adults who feel completely alienated from their children.
It's an epidemic scale.
Yeah.
And to understand how it happens, the documentary argues you really have to look at the structural forces driving families apart, specifically the financial incentives.
Right, the money.
Always the money. They estimate that the family court system is a $28 billion to $50 billion a year industry.
Wow.
Yeah. What is critical to understand here is the difference between family court and criminal court. Like, in a criminal court, the state has to meet rigorous, objective tests to file charges. Evidence standards are super high.
Right, beyond a reasonable doubt, all that.
Exactly. But in family court, the evidence standards are much, much looser.
So judges, custody evaluators, and court-appointed psychologists can make these life-altering findings based essentially on opinions. Opinions that they don't necessarily have to justify with clear scientific validation.
Which is terrifying.
It is. If you think about it, it's like throwing these families into a gladiator arena, and the prize in the center of the ring is your own child. And the house, meaning the lawyers, the evaluators, the state, they always take a cut of the action.
That's a really good way to put it.
But I have to push back a little. Surely the child support system at its core is just trying to make sure that kids are actually provided for financially. Like,
Right.
That has to be the goal, right?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the documentary argues the exact opposite of that assumption.
Really?
Yeah. They point out that in many jurisdictions, more custody time equates to more child support money. So if shared parenting, say a 50-50 custody split, means little to no child support changes hands, there is an active financial disincentive for one parent to agree to joint custody.
Oh, I see. Because they lose the check.
Exactly. Furthermore, states actually earn more federal dollars to enforce child support. So the system itself inadvertently creates a financial incentive for parents to fight for sole custody, which sets the stage for deep, bitter conflict.
Wow. And the human cost of that systemic trap is just devastating. The sources give some incredibly stark examples to illustrate the mechanics of this trap. There's this father named Dizzy in the documentary.
Yeah, that story is heartbreaking.
It really is. He fell behind on his payments, and the state garnished his wages at his grocery store job so heavily that he literally received a paycheck for $0.00.
A literal $0 paycheck.
Yes. And the kicker, the documentary claims that the money the state collected from him didn't even go to his kids. The state kept the funds.
The mechanics of how that happens are just infuriating when you look at the details. The state applies the garnished wages to cover flat administrative fees and compounding interest on the arrears first before a single dime goes to the children.
So the kids get nothing anyway.
Right. So Dizzy is working a full-time job, getting a $0 paycheck, and his kids still aren't getting financial support from it. He is effectively trapped in a cycle where he can never get ahead, and the state's enforcement mechanism prioritizes its own fees over the child's well-being.
That is just soul-crushing. I mean, you can't even buy your kid a hamburger because the administrative fee ate your entire week's labor.
And that administrative trap can literally become a matter of life and death.
Yeah, they talk about Walter Scott.
They do. The documentary highlights his deeply tragic case. He was shot and killed by a police officer in South Carolina after running from a traffic stop.
Which was huge in the news.
It was. And the documentary points out that Scott allegedly ran because a warrant had been issued for his arrest. And why? Because he owed over $18,000 in child support.
Oh my God.
It wasn't that he was involved with his kids. His family noted he was very active in their lives. But he was caught in this exact cycle of debt, fees, and the threat of incarceration that he just couldn't escape, which led to that fateful decision to run.
What a profound systemic failure. So we have this multi-billion-dollar financial and legal battlefield, but the collateral damage is what happens to the minds of the children who are actually caught in the crossfire.
Right. The kids are the ones paying the heaviest psychological price.
Exactly. We're not just talking about missing a weekend visit here. We're talking about active psychological warfare.
The documentary really delves into the psychology of alienation here. They explain that in these high-conflict divorces, children develop a very specific survival mechanism.
Right, because they're stuck in the middle.
Exactly. When the conflict is unbearable, a child realizes that to survive their living situation, they have to choose a side. Usually they align with the parent they live with most, or the parent whose anger they fear the most.
And the brainwashing can be terrifyingly thorough. Like, there's the story in the sources about a young woman named Candace.
Oh, the Iranian father story.
Yes. Her mother actively conditioned her to fear her Iranian father. Her mother made her watch the movie Not Without My Daughter and literally convinced Candace that her father was part of a culture of kidnappers who wanted to steal her away to Iran.
Just installing pure fear into a child.
Pure fear. Candace was so terrified and so deeply manipulated that when she visited her father, she would scream at him, reject him, and actually steal his personal documents to give to her mother, so her mother could try and get him fired from his job.
It's just a tragic example of how the custodial parent can completely color a child's perception of reality. And the psychological toll on these children is immense.
It has to be.
It is. The documentary notes that alienated children frequently suffer from severe, long-lasting mental health consequences. We're talking about high rates of depression, turning to self-harm, cutting, or substance abuse at very young ages.
So let me ask you this. Is it simply that these children, because they are young, are just gullible? Or is something deeper fundamentally shifting in their actual sense of reality?
Oh, it's much deeper than gullibility. It's about the illusion of choice and the crushing pressure of the system. Imagine being 5 years old, right? Society and the courts step in and ask this child, who do you want to live with?
Which is an impossible question for a 5-year-old.
Exactly. By asking that question, you are forcing a child to declare that one of their parents is the better parent. You're forcing them to declare the other parent as merely a visitor or worse, completely erased.
Wow.
So children will parrot the alienating parent's lies, even making up stories of abuse, simply to avoid conflict, please the parent they depend on, and just survive their daily reality.
And the court's attempts to fix this often make it worse, because they apply a blunt instrument to a really delicate psychological crisis.
They absolutely do.
Like, look at the story of Brandon in the sources. A judge recognized the alienation happening from his father. So the judge's solution was to order a temporary no-contact order between Brandon and his father to force reunification therapy with his mother.
We should probably clarify what reunification therapy often looks like in these extreme court-mandated scenarios.
Yeah, please do.
It frequently involves Taking a child who has been conditioned to be terrified of a parent and forcing them into a room with that parent under the threat of legal consequences for the custodial parent if it doesn't work. It's incredibly high pressure.
And the result for Brandon. At 16 years old, he ran away from home to the UK, armed with money and a passport allegedly provided by that same alienating father.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the heavy hand of the court just shattered the family further.
So, if the U.S. adversarial system is financially bankrupting parents and psychologically breaking children, we really have to look at the systemic alternatives proposed in the documentary.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The documentary introduces us to the Swedish model.
Right. So
In Sweden, separating parents don't stand to gain any money from a divorce. There's no financial prize to fight over. The mechanics are just beautifully simple. If they want to share custody, they literally just print out a simple form from the government website, sign it together to confirm they agree, and mail it in. That's it.
that sounds almost too easy.
Right. But going to court over custody is incredibly rare there because the legal presumption is that you are both going to continue raising the child.
And we are actually seeing pushes for that here in the U.S. The sources highlight that bills making 50 shared parenting the default have massive public support in places like Michigan.
Which is great.
It is. And psychological research backs this up. Children do significantly better and are actually buffered from the conflict of the divorce when they maintain a healthy, involved relationship with both parents.
Okay, but if the research supports it and the public supports it and it demonstrably protects kids, why isn't default 50-50 custody the norm everywhere? I mean, I know there are stated reasons for opposing it, usually centered around domestic violence or stability.
Yeah, opponents of default 50 custody bills often argue that a blanket presumption of shared parenting could force victims of domestic abuse to co-parent with their abusers, or that constantly shuffling a child between two homes disrupts their stability.
Right, those are the common arguments.
Those are the stated public-facing concerns. But if you follow the arguments in the documentary, they claim you have to follow the money to see the real resistance.
Always back to the money. The documentary claims there are massive, entrenched financial incentives to maintain the current adversarial system. They cite some specific examples of resistance from legal groups.
Like the Bar Association stuff.
Exactly. For instance, the documentary claims the Bar Association spent $110,000 hiring emergency lobbyists to defeat a shared parenting bill in Florida.
Wow.
And in North Dakota, they allegedly spent $70,000 on an advertising campaign to defeat a shared parenting ballot initiative.
Because less conflict means fewer court dates. Less fighting means fewer billable hours for lawyers and less requirement for expensive court-appointed psychologists. The assertion is that the family law industry inherently relies on the conflict to sustain its revenue.
It is a deeply cynical but structural view of the problem.
Yeah, very structural.
But, systemic change takes decades. Changing laws, fighting lobbyists, restructuring court fees, that takes a lifetime. But if you are a parent listening right now whose child hasn't spoken to you in 5 years, you don't have decades.
No, you need help now.
Exactly. The documentary explains the battlefield, but the Revive webinar is entirely about surviving the trenches today.
This is the Revive coaching method, created by Gentile. And as you mentioned earlier, she was an alienated child herself. Her approach is radical because it actively argues against almost every instinct a desperate, heartbroken parent has.
Right, because parents naturally want to fight, explain themselves, send gifts, or just, beg for a conversation.
Of course they do. It's human nature.
Yeah. But the webinar dismantles those instincts by tackling pervasive myths, like the myth that time heals all. The webinar argues that time actually just hardens the silence. If you don't actively learn new communication skills, the gap just gets wider.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or the myth that a grand apology fixes everything. Sending a massive amends letter usually backfires because it comes across as desperate, or it misdiagnoses what the child is actually upset about, pushing them further away.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the core philosophy of this webinar is a profound paradigm shift. Gentile tells parents, your child isn't staying away from you because they don't love you.
Which is hard to hear, but important.
Very important. They are staying away because coming back to you doesn't feel safe to their nervous system. They're protecting themselves from the conflict, from having to choose sides again, and from the overwhelming pressure of your pain.
I love the analogy the source material uses for this. Reconnecting with your estranged child is not a tug of war.
Oh, the rope analogy.
Yeah, you cannot grab a rope and pull them back across the divide.
Mhm.
If you pull, they will pull back harder to protect themselves. Instead, you have to become a lighthouse.
A lighthouse. I like that.
You have to stand stable, shining, calm, and safe so that when they are ready, they can navigate their own way back from the storm.
But how do you build that lighthouse? That is the REVIVE framework. It's an acronym.
Yeah.
And the very first R is the foundation of everything. Release the trauma response.
Releasing the trauma.
Right. The webinar stresses that if a parent is triggered, desperate, or just, vibrating with anxiety, the child's nervous system instantly senses that panic and retreats. You have to regulate your own nervous system first.
And they use this really fascinating concept to explain it. The hostage negotiator mindset.
Yes, this is brilliant.
It is. If you're dealing with an alienating ex, or even an estranged child who is hurling accusations at you, you cannot react with anger. The webinar points out that parents often give the alienator more emotional power over them than a hostage negotiator gives an actual terrorist with a weapon.
Let that sink in.
Right. A negotiator doesn't yell back. They stay entirely calm, predictable, and strategic.
Let's picture what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah.
Imagine an estranged child texts out of the blue and says, "You ruined my childhood, don't ever contact me again."
Which would be gut-wrenching.
Completely gut-wrenching. The instinct is to defend yourself. You want to say, "I didn't ruin your childhood, I paid for everything, your mother is lying to you."
Yeah, naturally.
But a hostage negotiator wouldn't do that. A hostage negotiator would de-escalate. They might reply, "I hear how much pain you're in, and I'm so sorry my actions made you feel that way. I'm here whenever you're ready to talk." It absorbs the blow without fighting back.
It completely shifts the power dynamic. So, what does this all mean for daily actions? The webinar gives some super concrete tactics. Rule 1, never send more than one invitation.
Just one.
Yep. If you invite them to Thanksgiving and they don't reply, you do not invite them to Christmas. You don't stalk them with invites. And rule 2, stop begging and start asking open questions. Instead of saying, "Please, I just want to see you," you ask, "How can I make this easy for you?"
You mentioned earlier, how does a parent apply this if they've been blocked for over a decade?
Right, because that seems impossible.
Well, the webinar claims they have successfully reunited parents who had zero contact for 13 years.
13 years! That's incredible.
It is. They do it by having the parents stop trying to force contact. They stop fighting fire with fire over text. Instead, they focus on building a stable, magnetic life. The webinar astutely points out that even a kid who has you completely blocked on their phone is highly likely to be stalking your social media using a fake account.
Oh, for sure. Kids definitely do that.
Exactly. So if they look and see a desperate victim, they stay away. But if they look and see a regulated, calm lighthouse, attraction starts to do the work.
It's all about becoming rejection-proof, regulating yourself to relax them. It's such a profound shift from the courtroom battles we talked about earlier. So let's pull all these threads together. We started by looking at a multi-billion-dollar family court machine that, according to our sources, actually incentivizes division and conflict.
Right.
We saw the devastating collateral damage, the shattered realities of the children caught in the middle, brainwashed into fearing their own parents. And finally, we explored these counterintuitive psychological strategies where parents heal those broken bonds, not by fighting harder, but by healing themselves first.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition.
Yeah.
An external legal system built entirely on adversarial combat, contrasted with an internal psychological system built entirely on unilateral de-escalation.
Yeah, that's perfectly stated. Whether you are navigating a high-conflict family drama, dealing with a toxic dynamic at your workplace, or just studying human behavior, that core principle of regulating yourself to relax others is an incredibly powerful tool to carry with you.
This raises an important question, though, one that builds on these sources but points to a larger cultural trend. The webinar briefly touched on how modern therapy and social media constantly encourage young people to aggressively set boundaries and cut off toxic parents.
Right, that is everywhere online.
It really is the prevailing cultural narrative right
The
now.
whole self-care means cutting people out, movement.
Exactly. But if we accept the documentary's premise, that a child can be systematically brainwashed by an alienating parent to view the healthy, loving parent as toxic, we have to ask, does our modern culturally celebrated language of self-care and cutting people off actually provide the perfect, socially acceptable cover story for parental alienation to thrive completely unchecked?
Oh, wow.
Are we giving alienated kids the vocabulary to permanently lock the door on a parent they only think is a threat?
That completely reframes how you look at every video on the internet about going no contact. It's a lot to mull over. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep looking for the incentives, and remember our opening thought. When the diagnostic X-ray of a family system is broken, you can't just point at the jagged line and assign blame. Sometimes the only way to heal the fracture is to stop pulling at the bones, step back, and become the lighthouse. Imagine you're just, standing in the middle of the grocery store. You're holding a basket, minding your own business, trying to figure out what to make for dinner. And an old acquaintance spots you near the produce aisle.
Oh, man. I know where this is going.
Right. They walk over and they ask with this big, friendly, totally innocent smile, "Hey, how are your kids doing?" And you freeze.
Yeah.
Your chest tightens. Your stomach physically drops into your shoes because in that split second you have to decide, do you lie?
Right. Do you put on the fake smile?
Exactly. Do you just say, "Oh, they're great, doing really well," or do you admit the terrifying, agonizing truth? That you haven't spoken to your children in years, and the very last text message they sent you was literally, "I hate you, do not contact me."
It's just an incredibly heavy, isolating burden to carry. Because you're standing there next to the apples wondering if everyone around you can somehow tell that your family is completely fractured.
Yeah.
And that kind of pain is deeply private. But in moments like that, it becomes agonizingly public. It forces this physiological response of pure panic.
And that exact heart-stopping panic is really what we are dismantling today. We are doing a deep dive into the hidden psychology of severe family estrangement. Specifically, we're unpacking this highly counterintuitive masterclass by a coach named Gentile, who created something called the Revive method.
Right.
Our mission today is to figure out exactly why these profound foundational family bonds break in the first place, and more importantly, the unconventional steps required to rebuild them. And the biggest hook here, doing it without begging, without fighting, and without trying to force an apology.
Which is huge, because the goal of this approach isn't just figuring out how to craft, the perfect manipulative text message to get a reply.
Gen magic words.
Exactly. It's a complete paradigm shift in how we handle human conflict. But before we can even touch on how to fix a broken family dynamic, we really have to look at the sheer scale of the issue and understand why the universally accepted standard advice actually makes the problem exponentially worse.
I mean, the numbers blew my mind. Roughly 1 in 4 Americans are currently estranged from a close family member. 1 in 4.
It's staggering.
It is. And for fathers specifically who have been alienated from a child, this estrangement lasts an average of 7.9 years. We aren't talking about a teenager locking their bedroom door for the weekend.
No, not at all.
Nearly 8 years is a massive chunk of a lifetime. It means missing, high school graduations, weddings, the birth of grandchildren. It is literally a modern epidemic.
It is. And when parents face a crisis of this magnitude, they naturally turn to the traditional safety nets, right? Things like therapy or support groups.
Sure, that's what we're all told to do.
Right. But the methodology we're exploring today argues that these conventional avenues are actively failing estranged parents. Take traditional talk therapy, for instance.
Okay.
It often looks backward. It keeps the parent focused on endlessly processing what happened in the past, analyzing every old wound, rather than, equipping them with an actionable, forward-looking strategy.
And the critique of support groups was even more brutal. The masterclass describes these groups as places where parents essentially become addicted to pain.
Yes.
Which makes sense if you think about it. If you're sitting in a circle every Tuesday night with a dozen other people who also haven't solved the problem, you're just swapping tragedies. You stay completely stuck in a victim narrative.
Exactly. The logic there is that if you are surrounded by people who are actively bleeding, you aren't going to miraculously learn how to apply a tourniquet. You're just going to learn how to talk endlessly about blood.
Okay.
And another massive conventional failure that gets dismantled here is the myth that an apology fixes everything. We all heard the advice, right? If you hurt someone, write them a long, heartfelt amends letter taking full accountability.
Wait, but doing that in an estrangement scenario almost always backfires.
Almost every time.
Because parents end up apologizing for the wrong things, or they apologize profusely for way too much, which just reads as desperate. Or worse, they accidentally trigger old traumas by bringing up specific events the child had buried. The letter basically forces the child to process the parent's guilt, which is a massive emotional burden, and it just, pushes them further away.
Right, it demands emotional labor from someone who has already explicitly said they don't want to engage with you. So you have a parent trying to do the right thing, and it just results in a thicker wall being built.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If apologizing backfires and going to therapy just keeps you stuck in the past and joining a support group makes you a professional victim, aren't the only options left either dragging your kid to court to force visitation or just completely giving up?
That is the ultimate binary trap. And it's a false choice. First of all, the legal route is a total dead end for this. Courts cannot order a teenager, let alone an adult, to love you.
Yeah, obviously.
Once a kid is over 13, the legal system is largely powerless to force any meaningful relationship. A judge can't mandate affection. And on the flip side, surrendering entirely has its own devastating consequence. Giving up means, as the phrase goes, you die as you live.
That phrase.
I know. There are heartbreaking accounts of hospice nurses who watch parents on their deathbeds, literally begging for their kids, and the kids still refuse to walk through the door.
That is genuinely chilling. So, okay, if fighting them in court fails and surrendering is a tragedy, what is the third option? Because if pushing, begging, and sending unacknowledged birthday gifts don't work, there has to be a different mechanism at play here.
There is. The third option is active, internal preparation. And to understand it, we really have to answer the most important question: why do kids pull away in the first place?
Right.
The realization here is that children do not cut contact to punish the parent. That is a myth.
Wait, really? It feels like punishment.
It feels like it, but they pull away to protect themselves. They are protecting their own nervous systems from agonizing conflict, from loyalty tests between two warring parents, and from the overwhelming desperation of a parent who is emotionally falling apart.
Oh, that makes so much sense. There was such a striking, vulnerable story used to illustrate this. The speaker, Ginger, talked about her own childhood. When she was 13, she was completely estranged from her father. And one year, he gave her a vase for her birthday. And her reaction: she deliberately smashed it off a balcony, specifically so he could see the shattered pieces.
Wow.
Yeah. But now, looking back as an adult, she points out that she wasn't some evil, malicious mastermind. She was a deeply dysregulated, traumatized teenager whose nervous system was completely overloaded.
Exactly. And her father, who genuinely loved her, simply didn't know how to show up as a calm, safe harbor for a traumatized child.
Right.
When she smashed the vase, he likely reacted with hurt or anger or despair. He couldn't regulate his own emotions, which meant he couldn't help her regulate hers. And this brings us to the absolute golden rule of this entire methodology, which relies heavily on human biology. When you regulate, they relax.
Let's actually dig into the mechanics of that, because regulate your nervous system can sound like a wellness buzzword.
It really can.
How does that practically work? Listening to this, it almost sounds like trying to rescue a terrified stray dog. You don't chase a stray dog down the street with a leash, waving your arms and yelling, "I love you, let me hug you." It's just going to panic and run faster into traffic.
Right. It's terrifying for the dog.
You have to sit quietly in the yard. You put some food out. You slow your own breathing down. And you wait for it to realize, on its own terms, that you aren't a threat. You make yourself a safe place to land.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And the biological mechanism behind it is exactly the same for human beings. We were talking about the vagus nerve and the amygdala, the brain's alarm system.
Okay.
When a traumatized teenager or an estranged adult child sends you a venomous text message, your amygdala immediately lights up. It tells you that you are under attack. If you react to that, if you yell back or cry or aggressively defend yourself, your physical biology signals to their mirror neurons that the environment is indeed highly volatile and unsafe.
So you prove their alarm system right.
You prove it right. But if you hold your ground and stay calm...
It's essentially emotional hostage negotiation.
Exactly. Yeah, a hostage negotiator doesn't feel personally offended that the person inside the bank is yelling at them.
Right.
They don't take it as a critique of their character. They recognize the yelling as a symptom of a highly volatile state, and they strategically de-escalate. If you keep your voice low, if your posture remains open, if you don't match their panic, your regulated biology subconsciously communicates safety to them.
Because you can't logic someone out of a trauma response.
No, you can't hand them a bulleted list of reasons why they should feel safe. They have to literally feel it neurologically. Your calmness gives their nervous system permission to soften.
But here is the massive hurdle with that. That sounds incredibly difficult to do when it's your own flesh and blood. How do you know if your nervous system is actually regulated enough to be that ice-cold hostage negotiator?
Well, you test it. There is a deeply brutal but absolutely vital 5-question diagnostic test to find out if you are at a 0 or a 5 on the readiness scale.
Okay, let's go through these.
You score 1 point for a yes and 0 for a no. There's no middle ground. And we really need to walk through these because they expose exactly where the internal work needs to happen. Question 1. Can you think of your child without your chest tightening or your stomach dropping?
If I'm being brutally honest, if I hadn't spoken to my kid in 5 years, just hearing their name would make my heart race. I'd fail question 1 immediately.
Which is exactly why the question is so important. That bodily reaction, the tight chest, the racing heart, is your nervous system broadcasting distress. If you reach out while your chest is tight, the child will sense that underlying panic.
Okay, question 2.
Question 2. Can you respond to a horrible lie or a bitter complaint by de-escalating rather than defending yourself? Meaning, if they call you a deadbeat or a narcissist, can you validate that they feel that way without instantly launching into a PowerPoint presentation defending your character?
Which goes against every single human instinct we have. When someone attacks our character, our immediate biological response is to say, no, you're wrong, here are the facts.
Right, but facts don't matter to a dysregulated brain.
Okay, question 3.
Question 3. Do you have a measurable, step-by-step plan for the relationship? Not just a vague, desperate hope that things will get better, but an actual timed strategy for how to rebuild trust over months or years.
Again, most people are probably at a 0 there. We tend to just wing it, cross our fingers, and hope that time heals all wounds.
But time without strategy just breeds distance. Now, question 4 is the one that really challenges people.
Oh, boy.
Can you send love to the alienating parent, the ex-spouse or family member who actively turned the child against you, and internally thank them for being the parent of your child?
Okay, wait, stop right there. That is a massive pill to swallow. I get the concept of forgiveness, but wait, send love to the alienating ex who supposedly brainwashed your kid.
I know, it sounds...
Someone who has caused you years of agonizing, literal heartbreak. How is that remotely possible, let alone healthy? That sounds like you're just being a doormat for an abuser.
It sounds totally impossible. And frankly, infuriating.
Yeah.
But the deep psychology beneath it is fascinating. This is not about letting an abusive ex off the hook.
Okay.
It is certainly not about picking up the phone and calling them to say thanks. This is an entirely internal psychological exercise.
Yeah.
The logic is rooted in biology. Your child is literally 50% you and 50% the other parent.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going.
Right. If you harbor deep, unresolved, toxic hatred for your ex, your child subconsciously feels that you hate half of who they are.
That is profound.
If a child senses your disgust for their other parent, even if you never say a bad word about them out loud, but your jaw clenches every time their name comes up, the child's nervous system registers you as a threat to their own identity.
Wow. So if you hate where they came from, they will never feel fully accepted by you.
Right.
You have to clear that internal block so that when you interact with your child, you project uncorrupted safety. You cannot fake that kind of biological safety.
Exactly. Okay, the final diagnostic question, number 5. Does your life currently have meaning and joy without reuniting? Meaning, are you living a full, vibrant life? Or are you just sitting in a dark room by the phone, serving a self-imposed life sentence until they return?
And the rule tied to this score is incredibly strict. If you tally up your answers and you score a 0, 1, or 2 on this diagnostic, you do not reach out, period.
Absolutely not.
Reaching out when you are in a state of unresolved distress isn't brave. It is dangerous. You are just broadcasting pressure to a child who is already suffocating under it.
Exactly. You have to get your score up before you make a move.
Yeah.
Which leads perfectly into the actual execution. How do you move from a 0 to a 5?
Right, the methodology.
It's structured around the acronym REVIVE. It's a sequential playbook. You cannot skip steps.
Let's break those steps down because honestly, even if you are just dealing with a toxic coworker who constantly undermines you or a sibling who loves drama, these steps are universal conflict resolution superpowers.
Oh, absolutely. The R stands for release the trauma response. Before you even think about communication strategy, you have to regulate your own triggers.
Which isn't just taking a deep breath, right?
No, it's somatic work. If an email from that toxic coworker or a text from your estranged kid makes your hand shake, you aren't ready to reply. You have to train your body to exit the fight or flight mode first, often through grounding exercises or physical movement, so your brain can actually access its logical prefrontal cortex.
Makes sense. Then comes the embrace emotional healing. This means building a life where you are not entirely reliant on the other person for your baseline happiness.
Exactly.
You have to stop being a martyr. You have to get off the floor, go out with friends, pick up hobbies, and show the world, and by extension your child, that you are a healthy, whole person capable of joy.
Which naturally leads into the first V-Verify root causes. And there is a brilliant tactical pivot here regarding difficult exes.
Oh, I loved this part.
Many parents lament that the alienating parent is a raging narcissist or a clinical psychopath. The methodology flips this on its head and says, great, dealing with a narcissist is actually incredibly easy because their behavior is entirely 100% predictable.
That framing is so good. If you know their motivation is always going to be protecting their fragile ego or controlling the narrative, you can stop being emotionally devastated every time they lie about you. You can start anticipating it like weather.
Right.
You pack an umbrella because you know it's going to rain. You don't scream at the sky.
You use their predictability as a tactical advantage instead of a personal injury. Once you've neutralized that threat internally, you have the bandwidth for the I-improved communication skills. This is the mechanics of how you actually reach out when the time is right. It requires building new muscle memory.
And the rules for this communication are incredibly specific. For example, never send more than one invitation to an event. If Thanksgiving is coming up, you don't text them on Monday saying, "Are you coming?" and then follow up on Wednesday with, "We really miss you, please come," and then again on Thursday.
No, that reads as stalking. It is pure pressure.
It makes the child feel completely trapped.
Exactly. Instead, you drop one casual invitation. You make it explicitly clear that the door is open, there is no pressure, and then you leave it completely alone.
And when you do finally get them into a conversation, you use questions instead of demands. The ultimate tool here is asking, "How can I make this easy for you?"
That is such a powerful phrase.
It really shifts the cognitive load. It's almost impossible to get aggressively angry at someone who is calmly asking how they can accommodate your boundaries. It instantly lowers the temperature of the room.
It places them in the driver's seat, which is exactly what a panicked nervous system wants control. Following that, we reach the second tree. You vitalize your life. You have to become a magnet. Think about human nature. We all move towards stability, warmth, and joy. No one wants to board a sinking ship. If your child looks at your life and sees a tragic, weeping mess, they will stay away. If they see a vibrant, stable, vitalized life, they naturally want to be part of it.
Which culminates in the final E, execute a strategy. You only deploy your customized plan for reconnection after you are regulated, after you are healed, and after you are living well. But here is the massive curveball.
Right.
What if you literally can't execute a strategy because your kid has you completely blocked on everything? Phone number, Instagram, TikTok, email, you are entirely ghosted.
It's the ultimate modern roadblock, total no contact.
Right. But there was a hilarious but totally accurate warning about this. Even if your kid has blocked your main accounts, they're almost certainly still tracking you.
Oh, 100%.
Teenagers and young adults all have fake burner social media accounts. They use them to see if their school teachers have OnlyFans pages. They use them to spy on their exes, and they absolutely use them to snoop on their estranged parents.
The digital footprint is permanent, and they are watching it.
So, if you are posting sad, passive-aggressive quotes about ungrateful children or raging against your ex in Facebook comments, they see it from their burner account. And it instantly validates their decision to stay away because you look toxic. Therefore, your own social media presence is actually your best indirect broadcast tool.
That's right.
It's a billboard to prove to them from a distance that you are healed, happy, and safe to approach.
The fascinating modern reality check.
Yeah.
Now, just to provide full context on the source we are analyzing, this masterclass is the entry point into a comprehensive coaching program. It's a 90-day intensive that includes group calls, one-on-one coaching, and access to a legal AI tool. It costs roughly $4,000. Interestingly, they structure it with a guarantee. If a parent doesn't see a tangible positive change in 90 days, like receiving a text back or achieving a major emotional breakthrough, the program continues working with them for an extra month for free. The coach cites 88 successful reunifications in the previous year using this specific framework.
And look, whether someone decides to invest in a 90-day coaching program or just applies the free concepts from the masterclass, the underlying psychology we've unpacked today is undeniable. The realization that begging and over-explaining yourself projects weakness, not love. The biological fact that you cannot logic someone out of a trauma response. And the ultimate truth that true influence, true magnetism in any relationship doesn't come from forcing the other person to change. It comes entirely from regulating your own nervous system first.
Exactly. When we pull back and look at the bigger picture of how we interact with the world, these principles shift our entire paradigm of human conflict. We are so deeply conditioned to view silence in a relationship as a total failure.
We really are.
A blocked number, an unreturned text message, a cold shoulder from a friend. We interpret that silence as a tragic, permanent ending.
We take it as a final verdict.
We do. But the psychology we've explored today offers a profound reframing. What if you chose to view that silence not as the permanent end of the story, but merely as a necessary pause?
Wow.
A pause that the other person desperately needs for their own survival, but more importantly, a pause that gives you the required time to rebuild your own emotional foundation, so that when the silence finally breaks, you are actually ready to be the person they need.
I love that. It brings us right back to that grocery store aisle. The next time someone asks you, how are your kids, or how is that strained relationship going, your chest doesn't have to tighten. You don't have to freeze and panic because you know you are actively doing the work. But here's one final thought to mull over, something that goes beyond just fixing a single relationship. If you actually do this agonizing work, if you learn to regulate your nervous system, heal your own trauma, and stop reacting out of fear, you aren't just saving a relationship with your child or a coworker. You are likely breaking a generational curse. You have to wonder, how many of your own ancestors' relationships, how many broken families in your own history could have been saved if just one person had decided to stop fighting, stop begging, and start regulating?